I am that pure consciousness that has no conceptualization, no limitation. I am this inherently blissful state of being and consciousness. The manifest reality is projected on this Brahman. My true nature is not Nama Rupa. I am not bound to all the names or the forms. I am then that being as it is.
Can you elaborate on how recognizing this inner I moves us toward liberation and freedom?
You are Shiva. You are the totality. You wake up to realize that Sarvo Mamayam Vibhava, everything in the world is my own glory, my own expression. You feel the world as your body, all the different cosmoses, all the different galaxies. You wake up as a singular body.
Do we as sentient beings have any free will, or is everything predetermined?
You are that absolute pure consciousness. It is your volition that you wanted to experience the surplus of yourself. You wanted to be many. That desire in you to realize yourself as Shiva has to be your own.
Dr. Timalsina, thank you so much for coming on to the show.
Hi, Ian. Nice meeting you.
Of course. To begin this episode, can you explain the basic principles of Kashmiri Shaivism regarding the nature of reality, the Atman, and the ultimate purpose of human existence?
Oh, what did I do to start with such a deep question? Yes, so Kashmiri Shaivism is a non-dual teaching. But as soon as we talk of non-dualism, we are confused with either the Buddhist Madhyamaka, that's also a non-dual Advaita teaching, and the Advaita Vedanta of Shankara. So I have to first separate what Kashmiri Shaivism is not to help you get there, to say what Kashmiri Shaivism is. So from the Madhyamaka Yogacara perspective, when we are talking about non-dual, there is no dichotomy between the subject and the object, because foundationally, both subject, me, and object, things that I see, I encounter, are grounded on emptiness, meaning things do not have swabhava. There is nothing that has its own intrinsic, inherent nature. So, in contrast to that, Advaita Vedanta teaches, the Shankara's Advaita Vedanta teaches that there is this absolute foundational reality that they call the Brahman.
Yes.
And that is identical to the self that I am. So meaning, although I experience myself as the body or the mind or the ego, my true nature is not Nama Rupa, or I am not bound to all the names or the forms. So what am I then? I am then that being as it is, not conditioned by concepts, not marred by illusions or fantasies or dreams or memories. And I am that pure consciousness that has no conceptualization, no limitation, and therefore I am this inherently blissful state of being and consciousness. But what about the manifest reality? The manifest reality is projected on this Brahman, meaning being and consciousness, or being as consciousness. And what is this projection? This projection is never there. So therefore, even what is this does not make sense, because even when we are seeing as this, the only thing that is ever there is that very being and consciousness. Like when you ask a question, what is this snake? And you are simply pointing to a rope. then the question, what is this snake, doesn't even make sense.
Doesn't make sense.
Right? What is this mirage? Like you see a mirage in a desert. And even the question, what is this mirage, doesn't make sense, because there never is a mirage as it is. It just is a projection. So Advaita Vedanta rests, there is something as foundational as the substratum of the projected reality. But the projected reality of me and you, the projected reality of this world, of all my relations, of all my association with the objective world, is grounded on Maya. And we need to ground Kashmir Shaivism in contrast to these two non-dual theories, because for Kashmir Shaivism, this non-duality is the total union of this and the I. There is no rejection of this to support I. Like in Advaita Vedanta, whatever is projected is rejected to go to the foundation. But what I'm saying is whatever is coming out is its extension. Like the bubbles, Vedanta gives bubbles example. Kashmir Shaivism can also give that example. Advaita Vedanta gives tides, the example of the tides not being real, only the ocean being real.
Yeah.
But we can use even tides as absolutely real. The bubbles are also real. Bubbles are there as bubbles, and there is some content of water, some content of space, some content of air. It is grounded on, based on the same elemental reality of the basis that we call Shiva. Again, even in here, what is Shiva? Shiva is not categorically different from the Brahman, because it is again the Sat as being as it is, Chit, pure consciousness as it is, and Shiva is Chidananda Ghana, meaning the mass of bliss and consciousness. But what makes this philosophy different is because this Shiva is spontaneously expressing itself into the manifold. To become many, it does not need to reject itself. Shiva is what you and I and this world are. We all are not illusory projection on Shiva, but rather Shiva actively embraces the manifold nature. Shiva becomes many. And we can cite these references also from the Upanishads, because many people think that the Shaivism has to be completely out of the Upanishadic teaching. But this is not the case. There was a line of commentary before Shankaracharya that viewed the world as an expression of the absolute. But after Shankara, that the mainstream Advaita Vedanta philosophy became as a denial of the world, and as a consequence, it led to the denial of our relational reality. The world is a relational reality. You are a young man. You'll find someone to love. Someone will love you. And from the Vedanta perspective, it is just Maya.
Yeah.
From the perspective of Shaivism, Shiva and Shakti are an eternal embrace, inseparable. And so this is the world is like bubbling up of their love. It is the surplus of love, actually. So that is why we have this, you may have seen the Ardhanarishwara, like half Shiva, half man, half woman image of Shiva. And so this is the world as the matter and consciousness, the body and the mind. And so they are not in isolation, in rejection of each other, but rather they are complementary. And that's how I would say we have to start thinking about Trika Shaivism. I broadly say Trika Shaivism because the development didn't just happen in Kashmir. Of course, majority of the writings happened in Kashmir, but the original agamas were composed in almost all the parts over India, and many masters, even after Abhinavagupta or Jairatha or Kramaraja, there were many other teachers who were teaching in other areas, composing texts, and so it's a broadly Trika Shaiva system. It's a broadly a realist approach to non-dual reality. That's how I would say.
Wow.
Thank you.
Beautifully put. I'd love to understand the broader connection between Kashmiri Shaivism and Advaita Vedanta as paths of non-duality. You touched a little bit on this, which is why I would love to even go further. How would you describe the core difference between these two schools, especially in how they define consciousness and its relationship to the material world? Kashmiri Shaivism portrays Shiva as being endowed with Shakti, the dynamic power behind all of existence. How does this active, creative view of the divine compare to the more still, formless concept of Brahman in Advaita Vedanta?
From the Advaita Vedanta perspective, this foundational consciousness is nishkriya, meaning it has no activity, it has no agency, it has no will or volition of itself. It cannot assume any form of subjectivity, still being as it is. From the Trika Shaiva perspective, yes, that pure being consciousness is what the basis is, but it is free, swatantra. What is swatantra? It is able to manifest the reality upon itself, being a canvas, projecting itself into the canvas as the manifold, to become many and to be part of the world, to be part of a relational world, to be part of social engagement. And so, from the Advaita perspective, if the absolute nature is in itself a total stillness, nispanda, meaning having no pulsation, then any activity you do is not going to consequently reveal that actionless state. Why? Because you cannot have a contradictory entity giving rise to contradictory entity. You cannot have an eggplant giving birth to chicken because there is no homogeneity.
Yeah.
So if the absolute Brahman is completely bereft of volition, completely expunged of activities, actions, completely bereft of agency, your agency, your action, and your will, your volition are only hindrances towards your self-realization. So what can you do then? That very can is problematic. There is nothing to do. You have to give up doing. What can you think? You have to give up thinking. What should you want? You have to stop wanting. So as long as you are stuck in, let me go to the temple, it's a myth. We are teaching to kids that you go to worship the deities and then you will get a realization of the non-dual Brahman. That is contrary to what Shankaracharya taught. That is Sureshwara, a disciple, one of the foremost disciples of Shankaracharya actually, wrote a text called Naishkarmya Siddhi, establishment of Naishkarmya, the lack of the actions. So rejection of actions in totality. If the only thing you want to do is get to the point of total stillness, and that total stillness is possible, not by meditating. Because what do you do when you meditate? You think about something.
You do.
You are thinking.
Yeah.
Thinking is an action.
Mhm.
And even to want to meditate, that wanting has nothing to do here. So you have to systematically be able to bracket from the horizon of your consciousness, from the horizon of your mind, all actions,
Wow.
all the cognitive modes, and including the will to do anything. When you are able to do that, you are in this total stillness of non-duality, because this is only the Brahman as a motionless, pure consciousness exists. Now, from the Kashmiri Shaivite perspective, yes, you are that absolute, pure consciousness and pure being, but it is your volition that you wanted to experience the surplus of yourself. You wanted to be many, and you have embraced the manifold. And you wanted to enjoy the world, and you have created the world filled with objects. And you don't want some of these things. Even those are created by your will, either to not want something or someone else wants that, just because you become so many, and not all are like your mirrors. They all have their own spontaneity, their own freedom, their own free will. So imagine every mirror image of Shiva behaving as Shiva, having spontaneity, having freedom. This dynamism of the manifold has you as Shiva never erased your true nature as Shiva, still accepting your role of being in the world. Imagine if you were an actor. There's a beautiful metaphor of acting, actually, in the Shiva Sutra. And there's this one sutra says, Nartaka Atma, the self is the dancer or an actor. And then Rango Antaratma, the stage is the inner self, is the stage. Prakshakani, Indriyani, your very sensory faculties are the observers. And so Divasad Sattva Siddhi, how you attain the perfection in your acting is by having a total control over your intellect. So it's like they viewed the world realization as a different role playing. We are constantly role playing, and this is, we are playing the role of, like, even now I'm playing the role of a speaker, you are playing the role of a questioner,
Yes.
So this is a role for a time being. I hope not forever, because I won't be able to keep talking forever, right? So we'll play a different role after that. So what is the world? This is a role playing. So we go back to the heart of all these questioning, and what we trace back is this freedom within us to constitute a newness within us. Because you cannot be happy forever being that same old me. You want to play something new. That is what Shiva is. Why should Shiva be playing just the same old role? Asthasyad eka rupena vapusha chen maheshwara maheshwaratam samvittam tadatekshad gatadivat. Says Abhinavagupta writes in Tantra Loka that if Shiva were to stay the same forever without changing, then how would that even be God? How would that be even consciousness? It would be like a pod. So, meaning, for Abhinavagupta, if it is consciousness as it is, it needs to have that capacity, inherent capacity to become many, and to grasp and to assume manifold nature. And this is, then when you are assuming this, you can go back to your own will. Your will becomes one means to realize. So we are not suspending our will. Like in Advaita Vedanta of Shankara, we are actively asking the seeker to give up desires. What we are asking here, we are saying, Ichha Shakti Mahatripura Sundari, your desire is the highest goddess. Tripura Sundari. So there is nothing wrong in desire. You just have to cultivate a good type of desire.
Yeah.
So we are actually asking the subject to desire the best.
Yeah, the highest.
Highest,
desire.
not like every single desire is bad. No, there are some good desires and some are really actually highest desire. And so we are training to cultivate proper desire. We are training to cultivate proper knowledge. And we are also endorsing action. So there is no rejection of action here in Kashmir Shaivism, because Shiva is also dynamic. Shaktiman, like Shiva is endowed with Shakti. What does Shakti do? Shakti makes you able to do things. If you don't do anything, what is the point of having power? You see, power seeks to express itself. So that is your true nature, is filled with, replete with Shakti. And that is where we have to draw the line. Although there are many, many similarities between these two philosophies, but we have to draw the line basically on these grounding parameters. Thank you.
I would love to even build on that. There's this idea of spanda in Shaivism. Could you explain what spanda means and how it helps us see consciousness not as static, but as vibrational and dynamic?
Thank you. Actually, in Vimarsa, we are having a discourse right now on spanda.
Oh.
So there's a whole series on spanda philosophy. I'm giving lectures on every Sunday. So what is spanda? Spadi kinchit chalane, the Sanskrit root is to have a slight motion, movement. Meaning, when we are talking about consciousness, there never is a state in consciousness as it is that it is totally static. Because that would be counterintuitive of it being free. Meaning, why? Why should a free subject have motion? Meaning has to have the capacity at least to move, to think, to desire. So that spanda is, first of all, the nature of the totality. But spanda is also the nature of all the entities that exist, particularly the nature of living beings. In the totality, Shiva as a spanda expresses how we all, animate and inanimate entities, are subsumed within this foundational consciousness that is always pulsating. You go to ocean, it is always a beautiful metaphor actually, and even peaceful to see from outside if you are flying up the ocean and you know how calm it is. But actually go and try to, kayak there and you will realize how there is always turbulence in the ocean. I have not ever seen a totally peaceful ocean, okay? There are always some tides. So that is how we see in the Advaita system that this intrinsic pulsation is its inherent nature. And what does that pulsation do? It gives rise to the manifold. And just because it gives rise to the manifold doesn't mean that it is expunged of its own intrinsic nature. It is expressing its nature. Suppose you are a singer, and when you are singing, your beautiful melody coming out, you are different from the melody. You are not the melody. But just because you are singing doesn't mean that you don't exist. It is you who is singing. The same way the totality is singing in the form of the world. This vibration is that singing, let's call that metaphorically, that pulsation. Yashunmesha nimesha abhyam jagataha pralayodayau tam shakti chakra vibhava prabhavam shankaram stuma. That's just a beautiful book, just 52 verses in Spanda Karika, the stanzas on vibration or pulsation. And so in this, the book itself begins is this Shankara having Unmesha and Nimesha, like projecting the world out, and that is when he himself becomes outward and conceals his true nature, or projects himself inward and then conceals the world outward. There is something being concealed all the time. Right now, we think, oh, why don't I see my Shiva nature then?
No.
And it's very easy question to ask. But then when you are just Shiva, less stillness, just full, non-dual, singular nature, go to the mountain top and meditate for an hour, 2 hours. I'll give you 24 hours. And then you'll be bored to death. I know, I just want to go to society. I need to go to the civilization. I need to talk to somebody. So the Upanishad says, Tad Aikshata, that absolute desired, Ekoham Bhausyama, I am one, I want to be many. Ekaki Naivareme, did not like it being alone. No, there is this, even in this solitude, there is just not always, we fantasize, I would just want to go in deep meditative state and never come out. So go to that state and you will realize that it will phase out too. Then you will realize that you need to come out to the world. So the world is not as horrible as these other philosophers have made it. Because what they said, the world is always dukkha. This whole projection of the world as a mass of suffering started from, I would say, the Sramana traditions, historically around 5th century before the Common Era. The huge movements, and the way they viewed was the renunciate, rejecting the world, rejecting household life, rejecting actions, and just going and meditating inside the cave. Many forms, not just Buddhism or Jainism or these mendicant orders, even within Hinduism. Many forms of Sramana movements started. What they did, they saw the world as the problem. Yes, in the world we have problems. I'm not saying the world doesn't have the problems. But what it is the world as such is not a problem. It is our relation with the world. It is how we relate to the world is what is the problem. You have a mother, you have a sister, and then sometimes maybe you have some problems, but the mom is not the problem. Your relation with her and our interaction with some others, So therefore, we are the problem. But basically, our own limited projection is the problem. Our false anticipation is the problem. Our irrational expectation from each other is the problem, So when we recognize that what we are demanding is nonsensical, and then we stop demanding from each other's much, then there is no problem. So therefore, the whole idea is that run away from the world. Where are you going to go? And where do you think you can go? Run away from the world. Going to the forest, that is still the world, okay? Just running away from your loved ones, going and sleeping with some snakes and mosquitoes is not a liberation. That's how Kashmir Shaivism rejected that model, very frankly. It's just, I'm not saying therefore you should stay here, but what we see is like whether you should wear a hat for liberation or whether you should wear a sunglass for liberation. What is that even the question? Like, that's nonsensical. Whether you wear a hat or not, whether you are wearing a sunglass or not, what does it matter with realization, right? So it's the same way. Whatever you like to do with your food or your lifestyle has nothing to do with your realization. We are just imposing value on completely false things and rather giving priorities to our own inwardness, our own realization to who I am in reality, and then to also recognize the world as interrelational. Because our relationship with the world matters. Why does it matter? We are handed down with all these great philosophies. I relate to the philosophers from before the Common Era. When I'm reciting the verses, I'm remembering Yajnavalkya from maybe or 800 BCE or something like that, So when I'm talking of Shankaracharya, I'm relating with him after 1200 years. Abhinavagupta, I'm relating with him after the same time, like 900 years, 1,000 years or something like that. So this is our relational world.
Yeah.
And so why this philosophy matters is it seeks to cultivate relation in the world in a real sense. Because rejecting the world is not going to solve any of your problems. It might solve some problems if you have, like some brothers who want all your money. It will solve their problem. If you just give up all of that, they will be happy. But if you are a powerful man like a king and you give up your kingdom, then they will be happy. Somebody else wants your power. But that's not a solution. Somebody else will take power or money and then do the same thing or worse.
Yeah. That's true. I'm so happy you said it like that, because in spirituality, a lot of times that does happen, where people think that just by leaving the world, going to the forest, going into the mountains is going to solve all their problems. But that's not true. So I'm really happy you brought that up. I really think the audience will relate to that, because there comes a time where you have a lot of dispassion in spirituality, and a lot of our viewers go through that, and they mention that in the comments. So being able to hear that from you is definitely going to be reassuring to them. Hi everyone, just wanted to give a shout out to the sponsor of this video, FLFE. Life's fast. It's easy to feel overwhelmed. Oftentimes I used to just pass through the stress until I found FLFE. It creates a high consciousness field around your home or phone, literally raising the energetic environment you're in. Since using it, I feel cleaner, calmer, and more connected to myself and to others. It's not magic, it's energy. And it works. I know that in a world filled with noise and distractions, finding peace can be challenging, but FLFE offers a solution by creating high consciousness environments around you. Sign up for free and experience reduced stress, improved sleep, and enhanced focus. Now, back to the podcast. I also wanted to ask, can you elaborate on how recognizing this inner I moves us toward liberation and freedom from bondage, and how this idea plays into Shaiva metaphysics?
Relating to inward self. So, from the Trika perspective, we all are layered persons. Layered in the sense like an onion, like the rings, or a banana plant, there is no stem of banana plant. You keep peeling it off and you keep getting just the new barks and keep peeling off and then continues. So what is our essential nature? Everything is our essential nature. You cannot say the innermost core of the onion is the real thing and all the layers are not real. Every single layer of an onion is as real as the inside part of it. So the same way, where am I going at this is my subjectivity, my person, what is going inward, what is realizing inside nature. So first of all, let's say we are in the vocabulary they use is sakala, meaning I have a limited finite will, I have a limited cognition, and I have a very limited action. And I'm just perfectly happy in that finitude. It's so beautiful to be small. Have you met some really small people? Like trying to steal a penny from others. That's what I mean by a small person, trying to squeeze a mosquito out of it, so that's how small a human being can be. This is the chitta, the mind, that is, I'm not talking about the body. The mind, ultimately, it can come back to this is all I am, my body. And what happens when I blossom, when I become a bigger person? Then you stop being so different from me. Your pain and pleasure become inherent part of my own pain and pleasure. Because, if people are altruistic in nature, they have bigger mirror neurons, very actively assessing others' pain. And so when you are in pain, I can feel it. There are some people who are very intuitive and they can immediately feel others' pain, and some others are just completely happy in their world. They don't even care whether you are odd or not.
Yeah.
So gradually, from the Sakala state to, there are these, even the Ishvara stage, even the Mantreshwara stage, and then ultimately Sadashiva state or the Paramashiva state. So these are like, we are giving 7 layers subjectivity, just to say how the inwardness is not a get-go, either you are in or out, but there is a gradual progression towards inwardness that you can actively cultivate by expanding the will within you. Learn to grow, cultivate pure will. Learn to grow knowledge. Learn to cultivate pure wisdom. Learn to cultivate pure action. And so we gradually cultivate pure action, and when you do pure action, your agency becomes pure. You become a pure subject because your actions are what constitutes you. And then your will and your cognition, essentially, there is no categorical difference from the Trika perspective between knowledge and action. What we say is knowledge is a form of action, or action is an offshoot of knowledge. Action is an external extension. So coming back to the question, how does it work? That inwardness, a total realization through action, through cognition, through volition, gradually progressing further and further inward. Eventually, you are Shiva, meaning you are the totality. You are the subject experiencing the totality as your own body. Meaning you wake up to realize that Sarvo Mamayam Vibhava, this whole thing, everything in the world is my own glory, my own expression. So just like right now, you wake up and then you feel your toe, or you wiggle your shoulders. The same way, you feel the world as your body, all the different cosmoses, all the different galaxies. You wake up as a singular body, the whole world, the whole material extension in all 13 billion years plus world that we are used to. This we are calling just one Brahmanda, one projection. There are all these projections beneath projections, beneath projections. So imagine the multitudes of the worlds, infinite worlds you wake up to realize that you are the totality. And that's why there is not one, either this or that, but a gradual progression towards, we call this Purna Ahanta, I amness in its fullness. You become full. How does it work? Finally, coming to your question, how does it work? We are finite now. We are not happy because I feel incomplete. I feel there is something missing. Maybe if I had a girlfriend, maybe if I had that fancy car that my friend has, maybe if I had the house like his, maybe if I were as powerful as that man, maybe this, maybe that. What we are trying to do? We are trying to get rid of our limitation.
Oh.
But no matter how much we have, I'm sure you have noticed that in our society there are people with billions, and they're massively powerful people.
They are.
And I would have to say they are some of the most unhappy human beings too.
That's also true.
And also so limited. See how they spew hatred against other people. See how finite their world is. How limited their I am is when they talk about themselves. How small the heart they have. How incapable they are to feel the whole globe as their home, as their body.
Yeah.
Yeah? So having, what we realize is this: having power, having money doesn't blossom you, it doesn't help you come to your fullness. What does it then? That is where we go to this limitless volition and cognition and action. And that is Purnata, the fullness of Shiva. That is why we ultimately realize to go back to this completeness, fullness, repleteness of being. That is what we are calling Shiva. We are not calling Shiva as one individual. Nobody can be another individual. If Shiva is one subject, you can't expect yourself to become another being. Where Shiva, by Shiva, we mean that totality in your experience, rather than staying in this limitation. What we are asking is to be boundless. That's what we are trying to achieve. Thank you.
Wow. Building on that, I would love for you to describe some meditation practices that are central to this tradition. And could you also describe these techniques and what is actually occurring at the level of consciousness during these practices?
I would say I'll give you three different categories of practices. The first is a very simple, almost like from Advaita Vedanta type. Just stop the will, stop cognition, stop actions, but not necessarily stop like freezing, but recognize that you are always there. What does it mean? It means the absolute nature is never suspended. We are always true. We are always real. We have confused ourselves to be not Shiva. It is never the case that you are not Shiva. Even in the bondage, like there is a prince. I have given this example so many times because this is, I borrow this from Sureshwara Acharya actually. Like there's a hunter prince story in which this prince, the king loses the kingdom and he's killed, but the minister, very wise, is able to hide the prince and take him to forest, and he gives the prince to a huntsman, like a tribesman, and just like a prince is 2 years old, and then the tribesman raises him, teaches all the hunting lessons, and he can now make arrow, shoot an arrow, leap and, do all the taxidermy and every single thing you can imagine. And this minister has been constantly organizing the army to revolt, waiting for the right moment. Now, after 20 years, the king who took over the kingdom is not popular anymore, and there's a big protest going on, and this minister has also raised the army. And then he goes to this forest and meets the prince and says, now, prince, you have to accept your kingship and let's go and take over the kingdom. And this huntsman is like, this man is crazy. And then no, but you are adopted. And he says, no, I'm not. I'm going to talk to my dad. And actually they go talk to this huntsman. And huntsman says, unfortunately, my son, I love you so much, but yes, you are the prince. I adopted you to hide you. They would have killed you otherwise. And so there never was the case that this huntsman, young man, was never a prince, but he never realized it. There never is the case that you are not Shiva. You haven't realized it. So there is nothing to do in this level. This is only the will. But what happens, it becomes like Advaita Vedanta. Exactly like it. We call the Shambhava Upaya, but there is just a pure will only. But then we go to the second approach, because this is like by simple intellectual conversation, people don't get that realization. And then we give them some meditative state, Shakta Upaya, the will of Kali. And now we teach them the mandala from the external realm to the inner core of subjectivity. We teach them to trace back their own consciousness from the most external field to the sphere of this cognition, and to ultimately to the subjective realm, to I am. and gradually progressing inward. This gradual method is called krama. And in there we have diksha, initiation. In there we teach them how to meditate on mandala. In there we teach them about the deities. In there we have the mantras. But then when the students are not able to simply recognize their consciousness, true nature of consciousness, by simply gradually progressing from the outward to the inward space, we teach them external method we call the Andava Upaya, the approach of action. So what do we do then? We actually incorporate actions. We recite the mantra, japa. So that's like a recounting the mantra. What do you do when you are counting the mantra? Many people are confused. Counting the mantra is just like verbalization. Actually, yes, we start from verbalization, but then we train the students to slowly pay attention to verbalization in their own head without articulating out.
Yes.
And then slowly ask them to go back to the heart as thoughts arise. So they are able to channel the thoughts in the form of mantra and be able to grasp as they are arising. So this training helps them to tap into their thoughts as they emerge. Because the fundamental problem is most people are not able to tap into their thoughts before they are coagulated into particular shape or structure. So we train the students to go to trace back to the genesis of the thoughts of the thinking, and they see. They do not just feel, they see the thoughts. That is where the thought is like given in the form of speech, words. But you see it, so we call that pashyanti. So there is the bottom rock state of speech we call pashyanti. Pashyanti is you hear and see at the same time. Like synesthesia in a sense. It's like articulating itself. You go even beneath that. And that is where the mantra spontaneously pulsates. You are not pulsating mantra. You are not counting mantra. You become the mantra. You count yourself. Your ego blends and merges with the mantra. You become the mantra. And then we go from there to further deeper aspects. So this is just, I'm giving you a glimpse, but generally in these doctrines, we have Diksha, initiation, we have Abhisheka, consecration, we teach the forms of mandala, we teach different visualization of the images, the geometric designs, the deity forms. They are all used as tropes, as devices to train your mind. So these are all these, there are millions of techniques as we talk about this external action-based, kriya-based Andava Upaya. There are so many different methods for that.
Wow.
Thank you.
That's so beautiful. Beautifully said. I also wanted to ask, do you think the supreme reality or supreme beyond can ever be grasped by the mind or only realized through direct experience?
The mind, there are different mechanisms or vocabularies to talk about mind, but let me, there are two different philosophies also to discuss the mind. That is, one philosophy is the yoga of Patanjali, and Advaita has broadly appropriated the Patanjali's yoga structure when it comes to psychology. And from that perspective, yes, you have to suppress the mind to go to asampragnata, non-cognitive state of absorption, samadhi. And so the whole Patanjalian yoga has its own techniques and needs like a bigger discourse on that. But from the Trika perspective, what it is that very pure consciousness, when it embraces limitation, chepkya sankochini, the mind, chitta, the word for mind is chitta. Chitti is the pure consciousness, chitta is the mind, or chit is pure consciousness, chitta, the essential, the mode of mind, the modification of consciousness is the mind. So you do not need to erase the mind to get there. From this perspective, the mind is the finite form of your consciousness. The mind is like if your mom gave you $1,000 and you keep thinking, as long as I keep the 1,000, I'm never going to be a millionaire. Let me throw this out and start my business. I think that's like a dumb way to invest money. The way the Trika system says is you can invest this wisely and learn to multiply it. So the mind is like what you call this this the bug with the light little thing. Fireflies, sorry. Yeah. So the your mind has as much light as the light of in the belly of a firefly. But light is light, photon is photon, okay? You can't compare a firefly with the sun, but you actually can compare a firefly with the sun in terms of light, luminosity, in contrast to just some simple metal that doesn't emit any photon out of its body. So as long as emitting photons out of the body is concerned, a firefly is still comparable to the sun in contrast to a rock, right? So the same way, your mind has, no matter how finite, there still is the will. No matter how finite, there is still is cognition. No matter how finite, there still is the zeal to actualize something. You want to do something. You want to become somebody or do something in your life. And therefore, what we do is we cultivate this mind to actualize its fullness. So therefore, these are methodologically two different systems, wherein in one model you have to just simply drop off the mind. In the other, you are cultivating the mind to actualize its fullness. Because mind is not unreal. Mind is just a very finite reality. Because in one model, mind needs to be completely removed. There is no mentation, there is no mental activities. But in here, this mind is the hope for you to recognize your essential nature as consciousness, because it is only in the mind that you have this tiny bit of luminosity. It's in the mind that you have this steaming light or to see that I am or I want or, this thing I cognize, this thing I enjoy doing this. It is in the mind that consciousness is manifest. It is in the mind that you encounter that Shiva nature as that being consciousness. And therefore, mind is the window, not the sun itself. Mind is the window through which you can see the moon up there in the sky, the Shiva nature. So, but therefore, we do not break the window in anticipation, or we do not move away from the window. We use the moon. We use the window to see the moon.
Oh, what a beautiful way to put it. What a beautiful way. You were mentioning free will before as well. I wanted to ask you a very direct question, which a lot of our viewers have, whether it's someone regarding speaking about Advaita Vedanta or Kashmiri Shaivism. Do we as sentient beings have any free will at all, or is everything predetermined?
So this is a very good question. Even though many people have said so many things, there are 100 theories on free will, and philosophers East and West love to talk on free will non-stop, honestly. But I believe Trikashaiva system does have something to add on it. What does freedom imply? If I am free, I am able to do something. If I am free, I am able to project myself in something new. If I am free, first of all, I am free to have some desires, to want something. If I am. I'm not sure whether I'm or not, whether everything is predestined or not. So now let's go and check ourselves. From the Trikasaiva perspective, what we are saying is Shiva is absolutely autonomous and you are Shiva. Meaning you have to have the free will. Your will could not have been imposed by Shiva as a separate being. Only your will can be the free will. Meaning, I give you the desire to realize yourself. Now you want to realize yourself, but that was not what you wanted to do. That was not your will. So as long as I give you the desire to be the king and you become the king, it's not your desire to be the king. So the same way, that desire in you to realize yourself as Shiva has to be your own. If that desire is imposed by somebody else, then you don't have freedom. And you have to be able to do something agentively. You need to be a free subject to be able to enjoy your freedom. If you cannot act anything, then you are not a free subject. Let's go from Advaita Vedanta perspective. Why free subjectivity doesn't make sense? Who is free? Is the Maya subject free? Because Maya subject meaning a person who is confused and then thinks that he has some desires, thinks that he has to do something. He himself doesn't even know who he is. He believes himself to be completely different person and he has some superimposed desires, he has some superimposed activities and he has some superimposed agency. He's not even a subject. His subjectivity itself is illusory.
No.
So therefore, what type of free will are we trying to establish there? Now let's go to Madhyamaka system and the Buddhist philosophy. There is no self. From the fundamental initial point of departure when we want to discuss the Madhyamaka philosophy is subject is not real as much as the object is not real. There is no essential nature. There is no svabhava. Anatta means there is no self. There is no self. There is no essential nature. Everything is projected being dependent on each other. That is called pratitya samutpada. So, are there free subjects? There are no subjects to begin with. Subjects don't exist in reality, in the real sense, because only self-subjects could be free or not free. I cannot imagine, I cannot anticipate freedom without someone to be free. You need to have that person who can be free. How can you say the subjects don't exist but freedom exists? Whose freedom? You see? Therefore, if there is hope of any free will, only the Trika system can ground that free will, not these other philosophies. Let's drop these non-dual philosophies and let's go to some bhakti models. Let's go to God giving you all these things, your body, your world, whatever you are enjoying, your relation, you love God. And it's God who gave you even the desire to realize God. Are you even kidding? You are just a puppet. God is making you do things. Maybe God is making you do amazing things. God made you the king of all the galaxies, So what? Somebody made you. You didn't become the God of all the galaxies on your own. It's somebody put you to that position and somebody can throw you from that. You don't have freedom. You are put to do that. I would rather just go and fix shoes than to become a king imposed by somebody else. I want you to be a king or I'll shoot you to death. It's like that. What type of kingship is that, right? So that's not being a king. So that's like I'm doing you so much favor. I want you to come to heaven and enjoy with me. I don't want to enjoy with you. But no, you have to. You have done so much good. No, I would rather go to hell than to be with you. No, you can't do that. Then I'm not free. No, it doesn't make sense to go to miserable situation. We have the tendency to go to a more joyous states of being. But what if you don't want to? What if you don't want to hang out with Gandhi? I'm like that old man, I'm just kind of like, okay, I don't want to hang out with Gandhi right now. so,
Yeah.
so, but my point is, you have to have the freedom to suffer if you so desire. Freedom is not one-sided, that you have to enjoy the world. Freedom has two sides. This is the coin, the freedom, that has two sides. And I sometimes suffer. I chose to drive on my own, It's my freedom. It's like, okay, I thought, what if I just take a cab? But then I'm not free to do whatever I do after that. I have to be driven by somebody else.
That's true. That's true.
You see, I want to enjoy my own freedom. And then I suffer. So do not take suffering as always counterintuitive to being. To be involves to enjoy, but to enjoy involves to suffer.
Oh, wow. Very well put. Very well put. I'm sure that we're going to have a lot of comments just regarding this topic, because a lot of our viewers are interested in this, and it's just great to hear your take on it. Recently I watched a film called Being There. It was a film that I really loved, where the main character seems to live in a kind of a pre-egoic state. It made me wonder about early humans, like cavemen, who lived before structured language and culture. What kind of consciousness do you think that they operated from? Were they less burdened by ego or ignorance because they hadn't yet developed the mental structures we now associate with identity?
There are different layers of identity. So we don't even need to go to the caveman. Let's start from infants.
Mm-hmm.
So when a baby is born for a few months, you don't see any sign of the baby having some type of subjectivity.
Mm-hmm.
But slowly you can see the baby starts choosing something. I like it, I don't like it. No, I want the mom, I don't see the stranger. I don't want the stranger. Or I don't want my mom go away from me. The moving the eyes in the direction the mother moves. What was the subjectivity like in the womb itself? Inseparable. Let's call it a non-dual subjectivity.
Yeah.
The infant and the mother are one. Imagine the mother is willing to listen to the music or to eat something because the baby in the womb is part of making that choice. There have been tremendous amount of research on embryology and some early infancy in later stages before pregnancy, and then if you read what we are discovering recently in the last decade, there is a lot of choices that they are already making. There's some mechanisms of learning already happening, but still there is no split, a vertical split between subjectivity. Much longer time, the mother, the way she feels about her children, there still is not as vertical a split in subjectivity as many of us imagine. So even though the body is separate, there is a continuity of being in the body. So we have to go to look towards the hive mind then. What do I mean by the hive mind? You see, the termites, they work collectively. The ants or the bees, and the amount of calculations the bees are able to do, one single tiny bee is never able to solve the mathematics of the distance of the trajectory from the flower to the hive, But somehow they navigate, and the tribe doesn't just like roam around. They exactly know where to go. The guy just has to come back and wiggle his back and, just to show the roadmap, So everybody is now chasing after where he doesn't even need to go back. No, they just follow the map and then go there. So how the collective works, you must have seen these documentaries in how the ants make the belly breeze, when they're the army of ants marching to get their prey, and and then some ants make a breeze and other ants are crossing.
Yeah.
So meaning there is this capacity to transcend our body and tap into collectivity. There are some works on bicameral mind, and there's like a real meditative state in which we can go beyond this bodily divided subjectivity, and in that we can access to this collective state of the mind. What is a primitive mind? Primitive mind in that sense is much more advanced mind if we are thinking towards this unitary consciousness, singularity. A hive acts as a singular body. A tribesman, if he has in that sense a collectivity in his heart, acts for the collective. But we are not always, just because a tribesman, I don't want to romanticize a tribe's mind. Because think of the baboon, think of the apes, even in there, how they do the mating and how they compete against each other. They still have the passion and aversion. They still have the power play. They still have the tribe's mind. And therefore, they still have this disintegration from the singularity. So therefore, we can assume what that primordial mind would look like from its beautiful to the ugly. From the beautiful side is its ability to transcend the division, its ability to go beyond my personal ego and to act on behalf of the collective as a hive mind. And the ugly is the tribal nature, and the ugly is this singular control of power. So the less the civilized the society is, the more centralized the power is. And so you can see why it's like one baboon is trying to take over all the power over society. And what is he doing? He's rejecting Shiva nature of all the manifest bodies, because in the perfect society, every individual has the choice, should have the choice to do the right thing. And there should not be, in this utopian Shiva world, we don't need a policeman, because everybody is Shiva and everybody should be inclined to do the right thing. And everybody should act benevolently, because Shiva means benevolence. Shiva means compassion. The very word Shiva means compassion. And therefore, everybody has that innate compassionate nature. And when we are able to discover it, so our model in this utopian Shiva world is our education system. That we were supposed to give our children the education that allows to recognize our collectivity. That we are not separate to compete against each other for resources, to domesticate and abuse and subjugate others based on gender, based on race or whatever. So this recognition of universality is what the vision Shiva is there, what the vision Shiva stands for.
Wow, thank you. My final question is, how do you suggest we balance intellectual study with actual experimental understanding and balance this spiritual realization with our material day-to-day life?
In the Trikasaiva philosophy, I would say broadly the agamas, we have these twofold teachings. From the Buddhist Tantra perspective, easy vocabulary is they call Sutra and Tantra. Sutra is the philosophy, Tantra is the practice. From the Shaiva vocabulary, we call this Jnana and Yoga and Kriya and Charya. Meaning, first, we train students in philosophy. All these big ideas we plant in them. Don't believe that you are a finite subject. Don't buy it that everything is illusion. Don't believe that nothing matters or you have no agency or no power. But then you are given this philosophy, but how do you bring it to practice? Then that is where we give Diksha. The first is the mantra Diksha. So we give them the training in Shiva mantras. So this is the Chit, Ananda, Icha, Jnana, Kriya, meaning Chit means pure consciousness, Ananda means bliss, and Icha means volition, Jnana means cognition, and Kriya means action. So this is the fivefold nature of the Absolute. Based on the fivefold nature of the Absolute, we call this Amnaya or transmissions. So there is this fivefold transmission of Shiva. So there is the fivefold mantras and the fivefold deities associated with these mantras. And then we have these separate transmissions, amnayas, and they integrate so we train the students, we give them, this is certain hour of time, even if it is just a half an hour of time, that you have the mantras, you have the visualization of the mandalas, you have the deity images to cultivate based on the phonemes. Like you start from the phonemes, you recite the phonemes, and from there you give rise to the deity image. You dissolve the deity image back to the phonemes and back to your own consciousness. So we give them daily training to constitute the mandala from their heart to the wall and from the wall back to their heart. And that is where the practice lies. So these are already existing. I don't have to make anything. The beautiful thing is these systems are very well defined and very well made. The only thing is I just have to go back to the actual text and give the students what it is in its true form. So there is infinite forms of practices. I'm not saying these are the only things, but there are so many practices. But no matter what, the essential thing consistently there will always be some mantras. It doesn't matter which, there will be different. There will always be some mandalas, some geometric forms to project, and some deity images. And so as soon as we talk about deity images, many people come to me and say, oh, these are these idols, and I don't believe these are polytheism and all. What we are doing is we are giving you the freedom to cultivate the images and to trace it back to your own pristine form of consciousness. When we are giving mantras, we are training your mind to cultivate it in specific phonemic structures and to trace it back to tap it as your mind is constituting particular phonemes. If you are saying Om Namah Shivaya, don't chant it out. When you just tap in the very state that you just have the desire to chant Om Namah Shivaya. Go back to the heart where that desire is arising. Tap it there. So then we are tracing back from the external form to the inward nature of consciousness. So this is the training. And it needs, these trainings are, I always say, like bicycling or swimming. Don't just go and try on your own. You might drown yourself. So that's why we always have some teachers, even just to respect the tradition, that's how it is. Google is not or should not be your guru, You see, you should have the lineage, you should have a master, even if it's just metaphoric, Yeah. So that is how you honor the tradition also. So that's how we keep the practices.
This has been a truly enlightening conversation. I'm so excited to release this and for our audience to see this. So thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me here.
Of course.